Welcome to Crafty Polyglot, the monthly podcast where language meets creativity. Each month, we sit down with leading voices and innovators in language education, from renowned educators to pioneers shaping the future of multilingual learning. Together, we explore the art, the science, and the passion behind mastering languages, uncovering the strategies and stories that inspire learners and educators around the globe. Whether you're a teacher, a student, or simply a language enthusiast, Crafty Polyglot is your gateway to fresh insights, practical tips, and meaningful conversations that celebrate the vibrant world of languages. Join us on this journey, because in every language, there's a new world to discover.
Hello, I am Dr. Felicia EYBL, member of the Horse Education Group and the moderator for the Crafty Polyglot podcast. Today, I am pleased to have as our guest, Dr. Nicolette Grant. Dr. Grant is the president and CEO of Inspire Excellence, which specializes in coaching principals and district leaders as they develop, improve, and/or expand DLI programs. She currently serves on the Fostering Language Acquisition of North Carolina FLANC board and is on a joint national committee for languages, National Council for Languages and International Studies, JNCL-NCLIS, North Carolina advocate. Dr. Grant is also an Educational Leadership Program Advisory Board member for the Wake Forest School of Professional Studies. Previously, Dr. Grant served as the Learning Community Superintendent for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, the Chief Academic Officer for Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, and the Executive Director of Choice and Magnet Schools for Guilford County Schools. As the former principal of Collinswood Language Academy's K-8 DLI School in Charlotte, North Carolina, she received numerous awards and recognition for outstanding academic outcomes for bilingual students. Her successful journey creating Collinswood's middle school DLI program was included in Creating Dual Language Schools for a Transformed World, Administrators Speak by Drs. Virginia Collier and Wayne Thomas. Dr. Grant's doctoral research at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte focused on understanding and improving the onboarding experiences of international Latinx teachers in DLI programs. She currently serves as an adjunct professor teaching DLI administration graduate courses at East Carolina University and is an associate professor in the Educational Leadership Department at UNC Charlotte. Welcome, Dr. Grant. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
It is such a pleasure to have you with us today. How did you personally become a strong proponent of dual language immersion programs?
I think my love of language started in middle school. So I took Spanish in middle school and in high school and in college. And I grew up in New York, and a lot of my friends were Puerto Rican and Colombian and Peruvian. And I just love the language and I love the culture. So I was always interested in that. And then when I moved to Charlotte, I worked at Crown Point Elementary School, and I was the only staff member in the entire building who spoke Spanish, which was a shock to me. And we had a lot of Spanish-speaking students in the building and families. And so I took the initiative to translate for families and for students. I ended up creating a guide, a Spanish-English guide for the school to help teachers communicate with students. And I just loved that language opened doors and it broke down barriers between the families and the school, and the students and the families felt so excited that their language was being used and that they had someone to communicate with. So anyway, from that experience, I ended up meeting Cheryl Little, who was the literacy facilitator at Collinswood Language Academy at the time. And I was a literacy facilitator at Crown Point. And so she and I were at a meeting, and I was sharing my love of the language. And she was like, "Have you ever heard of Collinswood?" I was like, "No, I have never heard of Collinswood Language Academy. I've been in the district 10 years, had never heard of the school." She introduced me to the school at the same time that I was finishing my admin degree at UNC Charlotte. And once I visited, I was in love. Like, my soul felt like it was like being fed, like I was finally in the place that I was supposed to be all of my life. And I was introduced to dual language through Cheryl Little and the principal at the time, Maria Petrie, who started the program at Collinswood Language Academy.
Yes, that is amazing. That is wonderful. What part of that spark still motivates you today?
I love language. Like, if I could, I would love to learn every single language in the world. Like, I love language. I love the sound of it. I love the way that it expresses culture, the way that it expresses history, the way that it brings people together. The way that it dispels bias and assumptions of people. if you can't speak someone's language and you don't take the time to learn their culture, so many misunderstandings and so many geopolitical crises can occur. And I just love the fact that it's just, if we could just talk to one another, how many things could we solve in this world? You know, politically, geopolitically, militarily, diplomatically, solving a business crisis or a health crisis. So anyway, just language in general, I love it. And I love being around the language and I love hearing it. And so that's just something that feeds me.
Yes. And it's interesting too that you decided that language was important to you and that that's what feeds you and makes you grow or makes you just feel whole. That is great. So I just have to ask this because I know this about you. Does your twin sister also speak Spanish?
She does. She does. And then when I was at Collinswood, my daughter and my son were transferred to Collinswood when I was there. So I got to see my kids using the language. My son didn't finish at Collinswood. He ended up transferring to another school, but then he took up Latin, French, and Spanish.
Wow.
And my daughter stayed in Collinswood all through 8th grade and was the first group of our 8th graders that went through the program. Then she went off to high school, college. In college, she studied abroad in Spain for a semester. She studied abroad also in Chile, in Santiago, Chile for a semester. But then anyway, my sister, my twin, her children went to Collinswood. So I had my niece and nephew with me as well that went through the program. And so they're now high school senior and the others in college using the language. And it's just opened up the doors and opened up the world to all of them.
Right. And it's just so amazing how these language immersion experiences open the world up to our children. And people just do not understand what an amazing journey that is and how that helps you to understand other people. So you've observed countless dual language classrooms. What distinguishes a truly effective immersion environment from one that's just teaching in another language?
I would say, obviously, whether it's English, all traditional schools, we're teaching reading, writing, listening, and speaking.
Right.
So in a dual language school, you're doing that in 2 languages. But in addition to that, there's a 5th domain of metalinguistics. And so you're not only just teaching, in my case, it was Spanish and English, but you're also teaching students how to compare and contrast and study the language. And students learn their own language of English deeper or their own language of Spanish deeper, as well as the other language because of the constant comparisons and like fine tuning and looking and studying language, whether it's syntax or whether it's pronunciation, whether it's idioms, whether it's jokes, whatever it is, they're learning that in addition. And so the teachers, as they're teaching language and as they're teaching students to compare and contrast languages, they're also teaching culture. And so that stands out more so than other traditional programs. You know, traditional programs, they're just teaching the content. They're teaching the standards and the content. In our language immersion schools, they're teaching that plus the language, plus studying the language, plus culture.
Yes.
And that's something that stands out. That's unique.
Right. That is very unique. And that's what outside of language immersion, people don't understand. So what is something you think a great language immersion teacher does that might go unnoticed by an outsider?
I think one of the things that I look for the most when I go into classrooms are who's doing the talking. And we say that, you know, as principals, but it really is so important in a language school. And when I first arrived at Collinswood, what I noticed the most was the teachers were the ones doing the talking. So I'm walking around the classrooms, I'm like, okay, the teachers are learning the language. The teachers are practicing the language, you know, which is great. I mean, it's a model for students to be able to hear the language, but the students weren't producing it. So they're building, you know, and picking up their receptive understanding of the language, but they weren't using it. So that was like one of the first things I was like, guys, not guys, but staff, we need to do some more with cooperative learning. And so what I look for the most is cooperative learning being used effectively in the classroom. I'm looking for what opportunities the students have to read, write, listen, speak, and study the language. But they have to talk with their peers. They have to use the language in order for them to learn it. And so that's the thing I'm looking for the most. I'm also looking for teachers to be able to share their culture and help students to compare and contrast cultures. And I'm looking for scaffolding, language scaffolding, as well as content scaffolding. I'm looking for the use of sentence frames or graphic organizers, thinking maps. Like I'm looking for effective language strategies within the classroom. And I'm also looking for very high expectations for students and high engagement.
Absolutely. Those high expectations, I think, are very important for each student. So you've mentioned that immersion is not just about language, but it also includes culture, identity, and connection. How do you see immersion shaping the way students understand themselves and the world?
I think traditionally students aren't as attuned to their culture in America. And sometimes they don't even realize that they have a culture in America. They think everyone else has a culture. They don't have one. But I think in the classroom where they get to interact with students from Mexico or Peru or Puerto Rico or Colombia, Dominican Republic, Chile, and the teachers have said this too. So the teachers love being in a cultural environment like that because they get a chance to learn and talk to people from other Latin American countries that they don't typically engage with, Costa Rica and all these different places. But I think both the students and the teachers are getting a chance to learn other cultures. And as they learn other cultures, they start to think more introspectively about their own culture as they're comparing the two. So I think that provides a great opportunity for students. I'm not sure if I answered the full part of the question. Okay, but that's what I think I see.
So as we look at the realities, what are the biggest systemic challenges facing dual language and immersion programs today?
Okay, so one of the great things about dual language is that people are starting to learn about it. It's becoming a lot more popular. So in the last 15 years, the number of dual language programs in the country has tripled. We have over 3,600 programs now in the country. And in North Carolina, over the last, let's say 20 plus years, we've gone from 58 programs to over 300 programs. So the good thing is that people are learning about it and they see the benefits of it. The downside is that we're now fighting for teachers.
Right.
It's at the same time that we're dealing with a nationwide teaching shortage of just any teacher, let alone bilingual teacher. So teacher shortage is the biggest challenge, I would say, to dual language programs. And so many principals hire international teachers instead to fill the spaces, but there are a limited number of visas that are offered. And then those teachers can only stay for up to 5 years. And so every 5 years, you're having a churning of your staff and rebuilding and reteaching and getting them acclimated to American culture and American pedagogy, and then they leave, and then you start all over again. So I would say the biggest challenge is the teaching shortage. Secondly, I would say political policies, sometimes political biases that don't support dual language funding, whether it's federal funding or local funding. Sometimes it's local districts and central office staff that don't understand dual language, and so they don't know how to best support it, and therefore they're not supporting it in the way they should. And then what I've seen lately, as we're growing so many programs, there are a lot of schools that are being led by principals who don't have experience in dual language and were just placed at a dual language school. And so it's going to be so important that our school districts train the principals, make sure they know the research, the benefits, the strategies, that we're training central office staff so they know how best to support, and that we're advocating at our state and federal levels for the funding that we need for the program, the curriculum resources, and also for the teachers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what suggestions would you have just for leaders in districts as they look toward hiring or seeking international teachers?
Ideally, we would create our own Grow Your Own programs here. So we have had Waddell, and then Sale and Knoll and Collinswood and Oak Lawn and Alcela, South Mac High School, North Mac. We now have generations of kids, well, I won't say generation, years of students, graduates that have come through a dual language program. And so it would be ideal if we can create a partnership with like UNC Charlotte or a local school that I say UNC Charlotte because that's my school. So, and I have worked with them before, as we try to create a pipeline for our K-12 immersion students to go into the field of teaching so that they can become our next group of teachers. That way we have permanent residents that are here that understand the program and have a near native accent. And additionally, we have programs that take teacher assistants to teaching positions and teacher residencies. So looking at the local community, who can we get in our local community that speaks the language that can become a teacher assistant for a few years? How can we help them then to get their teaching license so that they can be the next group of teachers for us? And then for Spanish programs, going to Puerto Rico and hiring teachers from Puerto Rico because they're U.S. citizens and we don't have to deal with the visa issues. And then finally, we are using international companies. So we use Participate Learning, use EPG, TPG, and EPI. And there's another one, Global. So we're looking at different organizations that can hire teachers for us. But again, there's a limit on the number of visas, and there's more competition across the country of other districts that are trying to hire.
Yes, absolutely. So part of your research, and this might go back to the question you just answered, was on teacher retention in dual language programs. There's currently a shortage, and most teachers in dual language immersion programs are guest teachers. How do students benefit from having teachers who are native speakers of the non-English language?
I would say they benefit from the cultural exchange the most. Obviously, Spanish speakers from the United States can teach the class, but the teachers from from Peru, Colombia, Dominican Republic, they're bringing their culture. And so they're bringing sayings, expressions, idioms, stories that they read when they grew up. They're explaining what's happening in the country now. And I especially love when I was at Collins, where we had social studies was in Spanish. And I thought it was a great opportunity for the teachers to talk about their society, their cultures, their government as they were teaching our United States social studies standards. But they're bringing that authentic, obviously, language and accent, but they're also bringing the culture with them into the classroom. So I think that's a great benefit, but also the teachers are learning, like I said, from one another, from other countries, and then they're taking that back to their countries. And so it's an opportunity for some ambassadorship with the teacher and the cultural exchange with a transnational focus on them coming to our country and learning and teaching, and then taking things back to their country so they can teach their students about the American systems and American pedagogies. And they bring their pedagogies and we, learn ours. So It's a great opportunity for learning.
So how would you say that parents can support the teachers who are recently arrived in the United States?
So many ways, and your school did this and mine did as well. So we had a strong PTA, and it's important that the PTA is representative of the entire school.
Right.
So both languages on the PTA and all racial groups. But the PTA purchased furniture for the teachers, and we would lend that out to the teachers to use while they were here. And then when they finished their 3 to 5 year time with us, their contracts, we would collect the furniture and then use it again for another teacher that was coming in to just help them to furnish. And so the PTA had a storage unit that they would pay for. And so the help with the furniture was important. Many of these teachers are coming here with just 2 suitcases. So the PTA also would buy gift cards so that teachers could buy towels and sheets and kitchen items and toiletries. I think having one of the districts I worked with created like a housewarming parties for the teachers so that people
that's a great idea.
They could purchase, sheets and towels and whatever it is, they could purchase things for them and have a housewarming for them. Another district that I worked with is from my dissertation. Their district offered or held like it wasn't like an orientation so much as a welcome party for the families of the international teachers. And what they said was that the teachers from this district was that when the international teachers come, they have a school family that they are part of, who will mentor them and coach them and help them and train them. But when they come with their spouses, oftentimes their spouses are isolated. They can't work yet because they haven't gotten their J2 visas or whatever. And so, and their kids may not know anyone yet. And so she said, and one of the people from the dissertation research said that in her district, they hold almost like a family picnic, where they invite all of the international teachers and their spouses and their children with the staff's spouses and children. So they get a chance to get to know one another and meet one another, and the spouses don't feel so isolated. The children get to meet one another quickly. And she said it was a great way to welcome them into the school. And then another thing that came out was that there's such a difference between the Latin American culture and American culture that the teachers mentioned. In Latin America, they described it as Latin warmth. It's a family, communal feeling. And in America, they said it was more individualistic and more like work, industrialized, almost work. And the teachers are always rushing to do work and more work and more work. And they want relationships and they want time to get to know one another and getting adjusted to that industrial work focus and data focus was the other thing that they talked about, that we test so much in America. And they don't do that in the Latin American countries. That it's more of a holistic child development focused.
They don't do that anywhere but here.
Yeah. So that was an adjustment for the teachers. So the PTA providing them resources, furniture, taking them around town, showing them places, helping them get their, whether it's their driver's license or they're getting a car. The teachers mentioned that it's difficult for them because they don't have credit. They don't have credit scores.
That's right.
So when they come here and they try to apply for a car or apartment and they're asked for their credit scores, they don't have that information to give, and they don't have the social security number, and they don't have certain things. And it makes it so difficult, not only financially, especially when they have to come up with a deposit and the first month's rent before we've actually paid them here in the United States. But just there's so many bureaucratic challenges that they deal with. So anything that we can do to support their onboarding to the community is really important for the families. And then, of course, the school, how do they onboard them as far as pedagogy and expectation?
Yes, those are some very important points. And just having that connection with other people is important to international teachers when they arrive, because they really are just thrown into it, and it can be difficult. Yes. So Dr. Wayne Thomas and Dr. Virginia Collier are widely recognized for their longitudinal research on dual language immersion. Your research was also included in their book. Tell us a little bit about that and its impact on DLI programs.
So I met Doctors Collier and Thomas back in oh goodness, I'm dating myself, 2013, I want to say, at a dual language conference, and they visited Collinswood. So I was very excited to have them actually in my school. When I was started at Collinswood, it was a K-5 school when I was an assistant principal. And then when I became principal, my charge was to turn it into a middle school. So to grow the program, which was a little bit different, I think, than Inez had done it at Waddell and Bruns. Smith at the time, because she had middle school, then she kind of grew the elementary down into the K-8 by combining schools. So we didn't have any K-8 Spanish models here in Charlotte at the time. And so my charge was to research and develop and grow that program. And so when I met Doctors Collier and Thomas, they wanted to learn more about what I did to grow the middle school program. And they came and visited the school and toured the school. So 2013 was my third year of having the middle school. We had just made it up to 8th grade the year that they came, and they were blown away and they were so impressed. And so they asked me to write about that. So that's what I submitted to their third book, the Green Book, which is a book about administrators. They reached out to different administrators around the country to ask them to share different experiences they had in dual language. So that's what I shared in that particular book.
Great, great. So what else would you like to add, or what would you share with parents who are interested in enrolling their children in a dual language program?
Lots of things for parents. So first of all, it's an amazing program, life-changing program. My children went there, your children went there. Inez spoke earlier, and Lydia in one of your early episodes, their kids went there. The potential for expanding their world, expanding their perspectives, expanding their job opportunities, expanding students that can eventually feed our military. So we have bilingual military, or our United Nations. They need more bilingual speakers as well. But there's so many healthcare industry, like every industry.
Yes.
You cannot go wrong having two languages. And then, especially as an African-American woman, it was important to me. And it was important to the families in my school, because when I got there, our African-American representation was not as large. And just for the families seeing me as a leader that can use the language, and my daughter, and like the number of African-American families grew so substantially while I was there, and seeing the benefits that for African-American students in a dual language program, they outperformed their equal counterparts. This is from Collier and Thomas's research in middle school by almost a full year, that they're higher than their peers by almost a full year by middle school. And the academic benefits, the cognitive benefits, the social benefits, all of those things are wonderful for families, and even just in the community. Like having multiple languages helps you to be a better neighbor, helps you to be a better citizen within your own community. So I would say that for families, and to stick with it, that dual languages or language immersion is not an overnight thing. Research says that it takes from 5 to 7 years, at least 5 to 7 years, for your students to become proficient in the language. I would say for families, if you start in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, don't pull them out in second grade because you're worried about English. The kids are going to learn English as well as a second language, but commit to the program through all of elementary school and middle school if your district has it, middle school, through high school if you have it. Allow your child to travel internationally. We all did that as principals. We set that up for our students to be able to travel abroad. Our students went to Spain and went up to multiple cities around Spain and used the language and were immersed in the culture. And in your school, same in multiple countries. So give them that opportunity to use the language. And then finally, I would say for families, we need you as advocates.
Exactly.
So, learn as much as you can about dual language, about the research, the benefits, the strategies, and then become an advocate in your local district with your central office staff, your superintendent, your school board. Be an advocate at your state level for funding and support and policies, and then be an advocate at the federal level. And so you mentioned JNCL, which is the Joint National Committee for Languages, JNCL Nicholas, and it is an advocacy branch. And so what they do is they work directly with congressional leaders, and they advocate for whether it's WLARA, which is a bill that provides dual language and world language expansions for the military bases. or military-connected schools in the country, or whether it's World Leap, which is a new thing that we're advocating right now on the Hill for, which is similar to WLORA, but for districts that aren't necessarily connected to military to grow and expand dual language, whether it's making sure our federal government provides Title III funding for ESL students at the rate of $1 billion is what the ask is, as well as making sure it's efficiently distributed to the districts. And then study abroad is the other thing that we're focusing on. The Fulbright Hayes Scholar study abroad opportunities. The federal government has currently rescinded it, and we're trying to advocate that they bring that back because study abroad for our college students and for our teachers is so important. So as a parent, think about ways you can advocate locally at the state level and nationally to support this expansion of dual language.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You've provided us with some excellent information and insight into dual language and immersion, and we appreciate having you here.
Well,
thank you
so much.